Elena sat by the dying fire, watching her two children sleep under a thin blanket. The wind howled outside their small cottage, pushing through the cracks in the wooden walls. Her daughter Mira, only 8 years old, had stopped asking when they would eat a proper meal. Little Thomas, just 5, didn't understand why his father never came home anymore. 6 months had passed since the mining accident took her husband. 6 long months of watching their food supplies dwindle, their firewood pile shrink, and hope slip away like sand through her fingers. The other villagers helped when they could, but everyone struggled in these mountains. Winter was coming fast, and Elena knew they wouldn't survive it. She pulled her shawl tighter around her shoulders. The cold seemed to seep into her bones these days. Tomorrow she would have to make a decision. Tomorrow she would have to swallow her pride and do something she never thought she'd do. The trouble started 3 weeks ago. Old Boris spotted them first, a pack of wolves moving down from the higher peaks. They were hungry, desperate, just like everyone else. But unlike people, wolves didn't beg or borrow. They took what they wanted. First, they killed 2 sheep belonging to the miller. Then they took down a cow from the farmer on the edge of town. The men tried to hunt them, but these weren't ordinary hunters. They were farmers and craftsmen holding borrowed rifles they barely knew how to use. The wolves were smart, staying just out of range, circling closer each night. Last week, Elena heard them. Their howls cut through the darkness, making Mira whimper in her sleep. She got up and checked the door 3 times that night, pushing their old table against it. The lock was broken, had been for months. She didn't have money to fix it. Yesterday changed everything. Mira was playing near the well with the other children when a wolf appeared at the tree line. Just one, watching them with yellow eyes. The children screamed and ran. Mira fell, scraping her knee badly. The wolf took 3 steps forward before a man threw a rock and scared it off. Elena's hands shook as she cleaned Mira's wound. Her daughter was crying, terrified. Thomas clung to her skirt, asking if the bad dog would come back. She couldn't protect them. She had nothing. No gun, no money, no man to defend them. That evening, the village elder called a meeting in the church. Everyone gathered, faces tight with worry. They needed help, real help. They needed someone who knew how to deal with wolves. They needed Nikolai. The name hung in the air like smoke. Nikolai, the hunter who lived alone in the deep forest. Nikolai, who brought down bears and tracked mountain lions. Nikolai, who people whispered about but rarely saw. He's our only chance, the elder said. Someone has to go ask him. The men looked at their boots. The women clutched their children. Nobody wanted to make that journey into the dark woods. Nobody wanted to face the man who chose wolves and silence over human company. Elena stood up. Every eye turned to her. "I'll go," she said quietly. The room erupted in protest. A woman alone in the forest? Impossible. Too dangerous. But Elena raised her hand. "My children almost died. If nobody else will go, then I will." And tomorrow morning. She couldn't sleep that night. Everyone knew the stories about Nikolai. How he'd been different once years ago. How he'd been engaged to a beautiful girl from the valley. How she'd left him for a wealthy merchant. Breaking his heart so badly he retreated from the world. Now he lived like a ghost among the trees, speaking to no one, needing no one. But he was their only hope. As dawn broke, Elena dressed in her warmest clothes. She kissed her sleeping children and asked her neighbor, old Mrs. Petrova, to watch them. The woman hugged her tight. "Be careful, child. That man's heart turned to stone long ago." The path into the forest was overgrown. Few people went this way anymore. Elena walked for hours, following directions the elder had given her. Her feet ached. Her empty stomach cramped. But she pushed forward, thinking of Mira's terrified face, of Thomas asking about the bad dog. The trees grew thicker, blocking out the sun. Strange sounds echoed around her. Once she heard something large moving through the bushes and froze, heart pounding. But it passed without showing itself. Finally, as afternoon light filtered weakly through the branches, she saw it. A cabin, sturdy and well-built, sitting in a small clearing. Smoke rose from the chimney. Deer antlers hung above the door. Animal pelts stretched on frames leaned against the walls. Elena's courage almost failed her. She stood at the edge of the clearing, hands trembling. What was she doing here? What could she possibly offer a man who wanted nothing from the world? But then she thought of her baby sleeping under that thin blanket. She thought of those yellow eyes watching Mira. She took a deep breath and walked forward. Before she could knock, the door opened. A man stood there, tall and broad-shouldered, with dark hair touching his collar and a thick beard. His eyes were gray, cold as winter sky. He looked at her without expression. "I know why you're here," he said. His voice was rough, like he didn't use it much. "The village sent you." Elena lifted her chin, trying not to show her fear. "The wolves. They're threatening our children. We need your help, please." He studied her for a long moment. His gaze moved from her worn dress to her thin face to her desperate eyes. "And what does the village offer in return?" We don't have much, but we can pay something. A little money, food, whatever we can gather." "I don't need your money," he cut her off. "I don't need your food." Elena's heart sank. Then what?" "Please, there must be something. My children, they're only little. The wolves came so close yesterday. I can't lose them. I can't." Her voice cracked on the last words. Something flickered in his eyes. He stepped back into his cabin, and for a moment she thought he was closing the door on her. But he left it open. She followed him inside. The cabin was neat, organized, filled with hunting tools and furs. A fire burned in the hearth. It was warm. So warm compared to her freezing cottage. Nikolai turned to face her. When he spoke again, his words changed everything. "I'll help your village. I'll kill the wolves. I'll make sure your children are safe." He paused, his gray eyes locked on hers. "But only if you agree to one condition." Hope flared in Elena's chest. "Anything. Name it. Become my wife." The words hit her like a physical blow. She actually stepped backward, staring at him in disbelief. "What?" "You heard me. Marry me and I'll save your children. Refuse and they're on their own." His voice was flat, emotionless, like he was discussing a trade for firewood. Elena's mind reeled. This couldn't be real. He couldn't be serious. You can't mean that. That's not... You can't force someone to marry you." "I'm not forcing anything," he said calmly. "You came here asking for help. I'm telling you my price. Take it or leave it." She felt tears burning her eyes. How dare he? How dare he use her desperation, her children's lives, as leverage for something so personal? "You're a monster," she whispered. "Maybe," he agreed without emotion. "But I'm a monster who can save your village." "Can you?" Elna turned and ran. She stumbled out of the cabin, through the clearing, into the forest. Branches caught at her clothes, scratched her face. She didn't care. She just had to get away from him, from his cold eyes and cruel offer. By the time she reached the village, dusk had fallen. Mrs. Petrova was waiting anxiously. Did he agree to help? Elena shook her head, unable to speak. She gathered her children and held them close, breathing in their sweet scent. Mira looked up at her with worried eyes.
"Mama, did the hunter say no?"
"It's all right, sweetheart," Elena lied. "Everything will be all right." But that night, lying awake while her children slept, Elena heard them again. The wolves, closer than ever. Their howls seemed to surround the cottage. She got up and checked the door, pushed the table against it again. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely move the furniture. Through the window, she saw shadows moving in the moonlight. Yellow eyes gleamed in the darkness. One of them was so close she could see its breath fogging the air. Thomas woke up crying. Mira joined him. Elena gathered them both in her arms, trying to be brave while terror flooded through her. The wolves paced outside, testing the walls, looking for a way in. This was her choice now. Watch her children live in fear, possibly die, or accept the hunter's terrible bargain. As dawn broke and the wolves finally retreated, Elena made her decision. She knew what she had to do, even if it meant sacrificing herself. Even if it meant marrying a man who saw her as property to be traded for services, her children would live. Whatever the cost to her own happiness, her children would survive. She would return to the forest. She would accept his offer, and she would hate him for it. 3 days passed before Elena found the strength to return to the forest. 3 days of watching her children flinch at every sound. 3 days of villagers giving her pitying looks because the hunter had refused to help. 3 days of lying awake, hearing those howls getting closer. On the 4th morning, she woke before dawn. Her decision was made. She dressed carefully in her only good dress, the one she'd worn to her wedding years ago. If she was going to do this terrible thing, she would do it with dignity. Mrs. Petrova came to watch the children again. The old woman took one look at Elena's face and understood. She gripped Elena's hands. "Are you sure about this, child?" "No. Elena answered honestly. But what choice do I have? The walk through the forest felt different this time. Each step took her closer to a future she never wanted. A future chained to a man who saw her desperation as an opportunity. She thought about her husband, about the life they'd planned together, cut short by falling rocks and bad luck. She thought about love, real love, and how she'd never feel it again. The clearing appeared through the trees. The cabin looked the same, solid and isolated. Smoke still rose from the chimney. For a wild moment, Elena considered turning back, running away, taking her children and fleeing to another town, another life. But she had no money for travel, no family in other places, and winter was coming. They'd freeze to death on the road. She knocked on the door. Nikolai opened it immediately like he'd been expecting her. His expression didn't change when he saw her. No surprise, no satisfaction, nothing. Just that same cold, empty look. "I accept your offer," Elena said, forcing the words out. "I'll marry you. In exchange, you'll protect the village from the wolves. You'll make sure my children are safe." He nodded once. "Give me your hand." She hesitated, then extended her hand. His was rough, calloused, warm despite the cold morning. He turned her hand over, studying her palm like he was examining an animal track. "You've worked hard," he observed. "These aren't the hands of a lazy woman." Elena pulled her hand back. "Did you expect them to be? I've been doing everything alone for months. Chopping wood, hauling water, trying to keep my children from starving. Because my husband is dead and I have no one." Something flickered across his face, too quick to identify. "The wedding will be in 1 week. That gives me time to deal with the wolves first. I keep my promises." "How generous of you," Elena said bitterly, "to actually deliver on your half of this transaction before claiming your payment." "You came to me," Nikolai reminded her, his voice hardening. "You walked into my forest, stood in my home and asked for my help. I named my price. You could have said no. And watched my children die. You know I had no choice." Her voice rose, anger finally breaking through her fear. "You took advantage of a desperate woman. You're using my children's lives to force me into your bed. How does that make you any better than those wolves out there?" His jaw clenched. For a moment she thought he might throw her out. Part of her hoped he would, but instead, he walked to a shelf and pulled down a heavy coat. "The wolves have a den 3 miles north. I've been tracking them. There are 8 in the pack led by an old male. He's smart, aggressive, probably driven down from the high country by hunters. That's why he's targeting your village." He shrugged on the coat. "I'll handle it." "Just like that?" Elena asked. "You'll just go kill 8 wolves alone?" "I've killed worse things." He picked up his rifle, checked it with practiced efficiency. "Go home. Take care of your children. When the wolves are gone, I'll come to the village. We'll arrange the wedding." He walked past her out into the clearing. Elena stood in his doorway, watching him prepare his horse, load his equipment. He moved with complete confidence, like hunting a wolf pack was nothing more than a morning chore. "Why?" The question burst out of her. "Why marriage? You could have asked for anything else. Money, food, service. Why force someone to marry you?" Nikolai stopped, his back to her. For a long moment he didn't move. When he finally spoke, his voice was quieter. "Why does it matter? The deal is made. It matters because I need to understand. I need to know why you'd do something so cruel." He turned then, and for just a second she saw something in his eyes. Pain maybe, or loneliness so deep it had carved him hollow. "Go home, Elena." He swung onto his horse. "Keep your children inside until I return." She watched him ride into the forest until the trees swallowed him completely. Then she started the long walk back to the village, her heart heavy with dread and confusion. That evening, the village elder came to her cottage. "Is it true? You made a deal with the hunter?" Word traveled fast in small places. Elena nodded, not meeting his eyes. "What did he ask for in return?" "That's between him and me," Elena said firmly. "Let them wonder. Let them gossip." She wouldn't give them the satisfaction of knowing the full price of their salvation, but Mrs. Petrova knew. The old woman had seen too much of life to miss the signs. That night, after the children slept, she sat with Elena by the fire. "My husband wasn't a good man," Mrs. Petrova said suddenly. "Drank too much, had a heavy hand. But we managed. 50 years we managed. You know why?" Elena shook her head. "Because I decided to survive. Not to be happy, not to be in love. Just to survive, to give my children a better life than I had." She patted Elena's hand. Sometimes survival is enough. Sometimes it has to be. I don't want to just survive, Elena whispered. I want what I had before. I want someone who looks at me with love, who chose me because they wanted to, not because I was convenient. Life rarely gives us what we want, child. It gives us what we can handle. 2 days later, the news spread through the village like wildfire. The wolves were gone. Every single one. Nikolai had tracked them to their den and dealt with them. The old male leader's body hung from a tree at the forest edge, a warning to any other predators thinking of coming close. The villagers celebrated. Children played outside again without fear. Farmers relaxed their watch over livestock. Life returned to normal, for everyone except Elena. On the 7th day, Nikolai came to the village. He rode his horse straight to her cottage and dismounted. Elena was outside hanging wet clothes to dry. Her hands froze on the rope when she saw him. It's done, he said simply. The wolves won't trouble you again. Around them, villagers had stopped to stare. Elena felt their eyes, heard their whispers. She lifted her chin, refusing to show shame or fear. Then I'll keep my word too, she said clearly. When do you want the wedding? Tomorrow. At the church. Keep it simple. How romantic, Elena said with bitter sarcasm. Nikolai's expression didn't change. I never promised romance. I promised safety. Your children are safe now. The village is safe. I delivered, he was right. He'd done exactly what he said he would do. The fact that it made her sick to her stomach wasn't his problem. That night, Elena pulled out her wedding dress from the trunk at the foot of her bed. It smelled of lavender and memory. She'd been so happy the day she married her first husband, so full of hope and love and dreams. Tomorrow she'd wear it again, but it would mean something completely different. Tomorrow it would be a costume for a transaction. A pretty wrapping on a bitter pill. Mira watched her from the bed. Mama, why are you sad? Elena forced a smile. I'm not sad, sweetheart. I'm just thinking about Papa. Yes, about your Papa. And about how he would hate what she was about to do. Hate that she was selling herself to keep their children alive. But he wasn't here to protect them anymore. She was alone and she was doing what she had to do. Mrs. Petrova said, you're getting married again. Mira continued carefully. To the hunter man who killed the bad wolves. Elena sat on the bed, pulling her daughter close. Yes, he's going to take care of us now. Will he be nice? Like Papa was? The question broke Elena's heart. I don't know, baby. But he'll keep us safe. That's what matters. Except it wasn't all that mattered. Safety wasn't the same as happiness. Protection wasn't the same as love. But it was what she had, and it would have to be enough. The next morning dawned cold and clear. Elena, dressed in her white gown, did her hair and walked to the church with her children on each side. Villagers lined the path, watching silently. Some looked sympathetic. Others just looked curious. Nikolai was already there, standing at the altar in clean clothes. He'd trimmed his beard, combed his hair. He looked almost civilized, almost normal. But his eyes were still that same cold gray, revealing nothing. The priest performed the ceremony quickly. Elena spoke her vows in a flat voice. Nikolai's were equally emotionless. When the priest said they could kiss, Nikolai simply nodded at her. No kiss, no tenderness, just an acknowledgement that the deal was sealed. It's done, he said. Gather your things. You and the children move to my cabin today. Elena's last hope died. She'd secretly wished he might let them stay in the village, might only visit occasionally. But no, he wanted his full payment. A wife in his home, in his life, in his bed. As she packed their meager belongings, Mira and Thomas clung to her skirt, scared of leaving the only home they'd known. Elena hugged them tight, whispering promises she wasn't sure she could keep. By evening, they stood in Nikolai's clearing, their new home. Their prison, the place where Elena would spend the rest of her life paying for her children's safety with her own freedom. Nikolai opened the door wide. Welcome home, he said. The cabin felt smaller from the inside, packed with their belongings and the weight of Elena's resentment. Nikolai showed them around with few words. The main room had the fireplace, a table, chairs, a small bedroom off to the side for the children, and his bedroom, which Elena stared at with dread. The children sleep there, Nikolai said, pointing to the small room. You'll sleep here. He gestured to his bedroom. Elena's stomach turned. Of course, that was part of the bargain too, wasn't it? She was his wife now in every sense. She wanted to scream, to rage, to tell him she'd rather sleep with the wolves. But Mira and Thomas were watching with wide, frightened eyes. "Fine," she managed to say. That first night, Elena lay rigid on the far edge of the bed, as far from Nikolai as possible. He didn't try to touch her, didn't speak, just lay there breathing steadily until he fell asleep. Elena stayed awake for hours, tears sliding silently down her face. The days that followed established a cold routine. Nikolai left before dawn to check his traps and hunt. Elena cooked, cleaned, and tried to make the cabin feel less like a cage. The children adjusted slowly, exploring the forest near the cabin, though they stayed quiet around Nikolai. Elena barely spoke to her new husband. She answered his questions with single words, made his meals without looking at him, moved through the cabin like he was invisible. 2 weeks after the wedding, Mrs. Petrova made the long walk to visit. She brought bread and news from the village. When Nikolai left to give them privacy, the old woman studied Elena carefully. "You look tired, child." "I don't sleep well," Elena admitted. "Has he hurt you?" Elena shook her head. "No, he doesn't touch me at all." "We barely speak." Mrs. Petrova looked surprised. "He doesn't—" "You're not really his wife, then?" "I don't know what I am," Elena said bitterly. "I cook his food and sleep in his bed, but we're strangers. He treats me like a servant he has to share a room with. Maybe that's better than the alternative." "Maybe," Elena agreed, but it felt strange, empty, like waiting for something terrible that never came. After Mrs. Petrova left, Elena started paying more attention to Nikolai. She'd been so angry, so focused on her own misery that she hadn't really looked at him. Now she noticed small things. He carved toys for the children, little animals perfectly detailed. He left them where Thomas and Mira would find them, but never mentioned making them. He always brought back more meat than they needed. Later, Elena learned from Mrs. Petrova that anonymous packages of venison and rabbit appeared at the doors of the poorest families in the village. He fixed their cottage windows before winter truly hit, though Elena hadn't asked, patched the roof, brought warm furs for the children's beds. One evening, Mira got brave enough to approach him. "Mr. Nikolai, did you make this?" She held up a wooden rabbit. He nodded, not looking away from the knife he was sharpening. "It's beautiful, thank you." Mira hesitated, then added, "Can you teach me to carve?" Elena held her breath, waiting for him to refuse. But Nikolai set down his knife and gestured for Mira to sit beside him. For the next hour, he patiently showed her daughter how to hold the wood, how to cut with the grain, how to see the shape hidden inside. Watching them, Elena felt something shift inside her chest. This hard, cold man who'd forced her into marriage was being gentle with her daughter. His big hands guided Mira's small ones with surprising care. That night, after the children were asleep, Elena found courage she didn't know she had. "Why did you really make me marry you?" Nikolai looked up from the fire. "I told you my price." "No, you told me what you wanted. Not why you wanted it." Elena sat across from him, studying his face. "The village elder told me about your engagement. About the woman who left you." His expression hardened. "That's none of your concern. It became my concern when you forced me into this marriage. I deserve to know why." For a long moment he was silent. The fire crackled between them. Outside, wind moved through the trees. Finally he spoke. Her name was Katerina. "We grew up together. I thought we'd build a life. Get married, have children, grow old together." His voice was flat, emotionless, but Elena heard the old pain underneath. Then Ivan came. Rich merchant from the city. He had money, prospects, everything I didn't have. She left without even saying goodbye. Just a note saying she wanted a better life than I could give her. "So you punished me for what she did," Elena said quietly. "No." He looked at her directly. "I was tired of being alone. Tired of silence. Tired of living like I was already dead. When you came asking for help, I saw an opportunity. I could save your children and have what I wanted, a wife. A family. You could have just asked me," Elena said. "After you killed the wolves, you could have courted me properly. Maybe I would have said yes." Nikolai laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Would you have?" A poor widow, desperate to feed her children, would choose to marry the strange hermit in the woods. "Be honest." Elena opened her mouth to argue, then closed it. He was right. She wouldn't have chosen him. She would have been grateful, would have thanked him politely and never thought of him again. "So you took the choice away from both of us." she said. Yes. At least he was honest. Elena didn't know if that made it better or worse. The next morning, Thomas woke up crying. He had a fever, his small body burning hot. Elena tried everything she knew, cool cloths, herbal tea, prayers, but the fever climbed higher. The boy became delirious, calling for his dead father. Elena was frantic, terrified. She'd already lost her husband. She couldn't lose her son, too. I'm going to the village for medicine, Nikolai said, already putting on his coat. It's starting to snow, Elena protested. The path will be dangerous. Then I'd better hurry. He paused at the door. Keep him cool. Don't let the fever get higher. I'll be back as soon as I can. He left into the gathering storm. Elena sat with Thomas, bathing his face, singing lullabies, begging him to hold on. Mira curled up beside her brother, holding his hand. Hours passed. The snow fell heavier. Elena's worry grew. What if Nikolai got lost? What if he froze out there? She was surprised by how much the thought frightened her. Finally, near midnight, the door burst open. Nikolai stumbled in, covered in snow, carrying a bag from the village doctor. His lips were blue with cold. His hands shook as he handed her the medicine. Give him this. Doctor said every 4 hours until the fever breaks. Elena quickly prepared the medicine while Nikolai thawed by the fire. She glanced at him, saw him shivering violently, and felt something unexpected. Gratitude. Real gratitude, not resentment. Thank you, she said quietly. You didn't have to risk your life. He's your son, Nikolai said simply. As if that explained everything. That night, they took turns watching Thomas. Nikolai sat up for hours, checking the boy's fever, making sure he drank water. When Elena woke around dawn, she found her husband asleep in the chair beside Thomas's bed, his hand resting protectively on the boy's shoulder. The fever broke 2 days later. Thomas woke up weak but smiling, asking for breakfast. Elena cried with relief. Mira hugged her brother tight. And Nikolai, silent as always, just nodded and went to make soup. But something had changed. Elena couldn't hate him quite as fiercely anymore. He'd risked his life for her child. A child that wasn't even his. He'd stayed awake for 2 nights, watching over a little boy who flinched away from him. Maybe he wasn't the monster she thought he was. One afternoon, while Nikolai was checking his traps and the children were napping, Elena explored the cabin more thoroughly. In a trunk, she found things that told stories. A woman's handkerchief embroidered with flowers. Letters tied with ribbon never sent. A small portrait of a young couple, clearly Nikolai and Katerina, both smiling. He'd kept all of it. Every reminder of his broken heart. Elena sat on the floor holding the portrait. The man in the picture looked so different from the cold, silent hunter she'd married that Nikolai had open eyes, a real smile. He looked alive. What are you doing? Elena jumped. Nikolai stood in the doorway, snow on his shoulders. She'd been so lost in thought she hadn't heard him return. I'm sorry. I was just looking for extra blankets and I found... It's fine. He walked over, took the portrait from her hands. He stared at it for a moment. I was young, stupid. I thought love was enough. Love is enough, Elena said. When it's real. Hers wasn't real. He put the portrait back in the trunk. She loved what she thought I could become. When someone better came along, she left. Elena stood up, brushing dust from her skirt. I'm sorry that happened to you. I truly am. But it doesn't excuse what you did to me. I know. He met her eyes. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm just explaining. Do you regret it? The question came out before Elena could stop it. Forcing me to marry you? Nikolai was quiet for a long time. I regret how it happened. I don't regret having you here. It was the most honest thing he'd ever said to her. Elena didn't know how to respond. Part of her was still angry. Part of her was starting to understand. And a small part, growing larger every day, was beginning to see the lonely man behind the cold facade. That night, for the first time since their wedding, Elena didn't lie rigid on the far edge of the bed. She moved a little closer to the middle. Not touching, not yet, but not running away either. It was a small step. But it was a start. Outside, the winter wind howled through the trees. Inside the cabin, a fire burned warm. 2 children slept safely in their room. Winter settled over the mountains like a thick blanket. Snow piled high around the cabin, and the world shrank to just their small clearing. Elena found herself trapped in close quarters with a man she still barely knew, still barely spoke to. The routine became familiar, if not comfortable. Nikolai rose before dawn, checked his traps, hunted. Elena cooked, cleaned, taught the children their letters. They moved around each other like dancers who knew the steps but felt no music. Mira and Tomas adjusted faster than Elena expected. Children were resilient that way. They started calling him Papa Nikolai, tentatively at first, then with more confidence. He never told them to stop. One morning, Elena woke to find Nikolai's side of the bed empty and cold. She got up, wrapped a shawl around her shoulders, and found him in the main room with Thomas. The boy sat on his lap while Nikolai taught him how to tie knots. "This one's for securing game," Nikolai was saying, his rough hands guiding Thomas's small fingers. "Loop it here, pull tight, see?" Thomas's tongue stuck out in concentration. "Like this?" "Good. You're learning fast." Elena watched from the doorway unnoticed. The sight stirred something complicated in her chest. This wasn't the cold, demanding man who'd forced her into marriage. This was someone patient, almost fatherly. "Mama," Thomas spotted her. "Look what Papa Nikolai is teaching me." Papa Nikolai. The name sounded so natural coming from her son's mouth. Elena managed to smile. "That's wonderful, sweetheart." Nikolai glanced at her, something unreadable in his eyes. She looked away first. Later that day, while the children played in the snow outside, Elena was mending clothes when she found a hole in Nikolai's favorite hunting shirt. The fabric was worn thin from years of use. She could patch it, but it wouldn't last much longer. She had fabric from an old dress of hers. It would be simple to make him a new shirt. But why should she? He'd gotten everything he wanted. Her presence, her labor, a family he didn't earn. Why do anything extra? Elena stared at the worn shirt for a long time. Then, almost against her will, she began cutting fabric. Her hands knew the work even as her mind protested. She told herself it was just practicality. He needed a good shirt for hunting. If he got sick, she'd have to care for him. This was selfish, really, but deep down she knew it was more than that. A week later, she finished the shirt and left it folded on his side of the bed. She didn't mention it, didn't wait for thanks. But the next morning, he was wearing it. Their eyes met across the breakfast table. He nodded once. She nodded back. It was a small thing, but it felt significant. The children grew more attached to Nikolai with each passing day. Mira followed him around, asking endless questions about tracking animals, reading weather, surviving in the forest. He answered every single one with surprising patience. Tomas was more cautious, but even he warmed up. One evening, the boy had a nightmare about wolves. Before Elena could move, Nikolai was there, picking Tomas up, holding him close. "They're gone," Nikolai said quietly. "I killed them all. No wolves will hurt you. I promise, but what if more come? Then I'll kill those too. You're safe here. Your mother is safe. Your sister is safe. I'll make sure of it." Tomas buried his face in Nikolai's shoulder. "You promise?" "I promise." Elena watched from the doorway, her throat tight. He was good with them. Better than she'd expected, better than she wanted to admit. It would be easier if he was cruel, cold with everyone. But he wasn't, he was just cold with her, or was he? She started noticing other things. How he always served her first at meals. How he stoked the fire during the night so she wouldn't wake up cold. How he'd repaired her boots without being asked, replacing the worn soles with new leather. These weren't the actions of a man who saw her as just a transaction. But he never spoke of it, never acknowledged any of it. He remained distant, locked behind his walls. One night, unable to sleep, Elena finally broke the silence that had stretched between them for weeks. "Why do you do it?" Nikolai turned his head on the pillow. "Do what?" "Act like you don't care. You're kind to the children. You help the village. You fix things without being asked. But you never talk about it. Never explain." He was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then words are cheap. They mean nothing. Actions matter. Words matter too, Elena insisted. "How can I understand you if you never speak?" "You don't need to understand me. You just need to—" He stopped. "To what? Obey, serve? Be grateful for the prison you put me in?" "This isn't a prison." Elena sat up, anger finally spilling over. "Isn't it? I didn't choose this. I didn't choose you. Every day I wake up in this cabin in this life and remember that I'm here because I had no other choice. Do you know what that feels like?" Nikolai sat up too, his face hard in the moonlight. "Yes, I know exactly what that feels like. I wake up every day knowing the woman I love chose money over me. Knowing I wasn't good enough never would be good enough. Knowing I'd spend my life alone unless I took what I wanted instead of asking for it. So we're both prisoners then, Elena said bitterly. You're trapped by your hurt, and I'm trapped by your need. Maybe we are. His voice softened slightly. But we're here together. Doesn't that count for something? Elena wanted to say no. Wanted to stay angry, stay hurt. But she thought about him riding through a blizzard for medicine. Thought about him staying awake for 2 nights to watch over Thomas. Thought about the wooden toys, the repaired boots, the new shirt he wore. I don't know, she admitted. I don't know what any of this means. They lay back down, not touching, the space between them both vast and small. But something had shifted. They'd finally spoken honestly, shared pieces of their pain. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't love. But it was more than silence. The next day, Elena decided to make his favorite meal. She'd overheard him mentioning it to Mira. A stew his mother used to make. She had to ask Mrs. Petrova for the recipe during the old woman's next visit. When Elena served it that evening, Nikolai stared at his bowl for a long moment. How did you know? I listened, Elena said simply. He took a bite and for just a second his guard dropped completely. She saw surprise, pleasure, and something that looked almost like pain. It tastes exactly like hers. Is that good or bad? Good. He met her eyes. Thank you, 2 words. Simple, sincere. They settled in Elena's chest like warm stones. Spring began to push back the winter. The snow melted, revealing mud and new green things. The cabin felt less isolated, less like a prison. Or maybe Elena just felt less like a prisoner. She still didn't love Nikolai, still resented how their marriage began. But she was starting to see him as a person, complicated and wounded. And he was starting to see her as more than just the answer to his loneliness. One afternoon, while Nikolai was teaching the children to fish at the nearby stream, Elena found herself missing them. Missing the sound of Thomas's laugh, Mira's chatter, even Nikolai's low voice answering their questions. When had this cabin started feeling like home? When had this strange, forced family started feeling real? She didn't have answers. But when they returned, muddy and happy, carrying 2 fish for dinner, Elena smiled. A real smile, not forced, Nikolai noticed. Their eyes met, and for the first time since she'd known him, he smiled back. It was small, uncertain, like he'd forgotten how, but it was genuine. That night, Elena moved closer to the middle of the bed. Not touching, but close enough that she could feel his warmth. Close enough that the distance between them felt less impossible. Elena, his voice was quiet in the darkness, yes? I know I can't undo how this started. Can't change what I did, but I want you to know, I'm glad you're here. You and the children, you've made this place feel alive again. Elena's heart squeezed. I'm still angry at you. I know. I don't know if I can forgive you. I know that too. But, she took a breath. But I don't hate you anymore. I don't know what I feel, but it's not hate. She felt him relax beside her. That's more than I deserve. Maybe it was. Maybe it wasn't. Elena didn't know anymore. Lines that had seemed so clear were blurring. The man who'd been her captor was becoming her companion. The transaction was becoming something more complicated. Outside, night birds called. Inside, 2 people who'd been forced together began to build something neither had expected. Not love, not yet, but understanding. Acceptance. The foundation of something that might, someday, grow into more. Elena closed her eyes and, for the first time since her wedding night, fell asleep without tears. Nikolai lay awake longer, listening to her breathe. He thought about the woman he'd forced into his life, about her strength and her pain. He thought about his loneliness, his mistakes, his desperate grab for happiness. He couldn't change the past. But maybe if he was patient, if he was careful, he could build a better future. Maybe they both could. The winter had been long and hard, but spring was coming, bringing with it the possibility of new growth, new chances, new beginnings. In the darkness, Nikolai allowed himself to hope. Spring transformed the mountain. Wildflowers pushed through the melting snow. Birds returned, filling the forest with song. The world felt reborn, and something inside Elena felt reborn too. She caught herself humming while cooking, smiling at small things, the way morning light fell through the window. Thomas's laughter, even the sight of Nikolai returning from hunting, his presence somehow reassuring rather than oppressive. When had that changed? She couldn't pinpoint an exact moment. It had happened gradually, like ice melting into water. One morning, Elena walked to the village for supplies. She hadn't been back since the wedding months ago. As she walked through the familiar streets, neighbors stared. Some whispered. She held her head high, refusing to show shame. Mrs. Petrova grabbed her arm, pulling her into her cottage. "Let them talk," the old woman said. "Tell me, how are things really?" Elena sat down, accepting tea. "Different than I expected. Better or worse?" "I don't know. Both, maybe." Elena wrapped her hands around the warm cup. "He's not cruel. He's good to the children. He works hard. But we're still strangers in some ways. Do you regret it?" Elena thought carefully. "I regret how it happened, but I don't regret that my children are fed, warm, safe. I don't regret that they smile again. And you? Do you smile?" "Sometimes," Elena admitted. "More than I thought I would." On her way home, Elena passed a group of women from the village. They fell silent as she approached, then burst into whispers once she passed. Elena heard fragments. "Forced her. Poor thing. Strange arrangement." She kept walking, but the words stung. They saw her as a victim. Maybe she was. But she was also surviving. Adapting, finding moments of peace in an impossible situation. That had to count for something. When she returned to the cabin, Elena found Nikolai sitting outside with the children, showing them how to identify animal tracks in the mud. Thomas was completely absorbed, asking question after question. Mira sketched the tracks in a notebook Nikolai had given her. He looked up as Elena approached. "Everything all right in the village?" "Fine, just the usual gossip." She set down her basket. "I brought fresh bread." That evening, after the children were asleep, Elena worked on mending by firelight. Nikolai was carving something, his large hands surprisingly delicate with the small knife. "They talk about us," Elena said suddenly. "The villagers. They think you forced me, think I'm some kind of prisoner." Nikolai's knife paused. "Isn't that what happened?" His honesty caught her off guard. "Yes, but it's more complicated now." "How?" Elena struggled to put it into words. "You gave me an impossible choice. But since then you've been better than you had any right to be. You're kind to my children. You provide for us. You've never been cruel or demanding. I don't know what to do with that." Nikolai set down his carving. "What do you want to do with it?" "I want to understand you. Really understand. Not just the hurt you carry, but who you are underneath it." He was quiet for a long moment. Then, "What do you want to know?" "Everything." "Start anywhere," so he did. Slowly, haltingly, Nikolai began to talk. He told her about growing up in these mountains. About learning to hunt from his father, who died when Nikolai was 15. About his mother, who passed 2 years later, leaving him alone. About building this cabin with his own hands, dreaming of filling it with family. He told her about Katerina, about the depth of his love and the completeness of his devastation when she left. About the years of loneliness growing harder, colder, until he barely recognized himself anymore. "When you came to my door that day," he said, "you looked so desperate, so fierce, like you'd fight the whole world for your children. I envied that. I wanted someone to care that much about me. So I took advantage. I'm not proud of it. But you did it anyway." "Yes, because I was tired of being alone. Tired of silence. Tired of wondering if this was all my life would ever be." Elena absorbed this. "I was terrified of you. That first day walking through the forest, I was shaking. I know. I could see it. But you demanded marriage anyway. I thought if I asked, you'd say no. Everyone always says no." He finally looked at her. "I was wrong to do it that way. If I could go back, I don't know what I'd do, but I'd try to do better." It wasn't an apology exactly, but it was close. Elena nodded slowly. "I was terrified that night, our wedding night. I know what you thought. That's why I didn't touch you. I wanted a wife, a family, a home. Not a frightened woman forced into my bed. Why didn't you tell me that? Would you have believed me? Probably not." Elena had been so convinced he was a monster she wouldn't have heard anything else. They talked late into the night, sharing stories, fears, regrets. When they finally went to bed, Elena didn't hesitate before moving close to him. Not touching still, but near enough to feel connected. "Thank you," she whispered, "for talking to me, for being honest. Thank you for listening." The next week, something happened that changed everything. Mrs. Petrova arrived at the cabin early one morning, her face panicked. The Miller's house caught fire last night. His wife is badly burned. Can you help? Elena grabbed her medicine kit immediately. Nikolai was right behind her. I'll come too. You might need help. They rushed to the village together. The scene was chaos. The Miller's wife lay on a bed, burns covering her arms and chest. Elena worked quickly, cleaning wounds, applying salves, trying to ease the woman's pain. Nikolai held the woman steady during the worst of it, his strength gentle but firm. They worked through the day and into the night. Other villagers brought water, clean cloths, food they didn't eat. Elena's hands shook with exhaustion, but she kept going. Nikolai stayed beside her, anticipating what she needed before she asked. Finally, near dawn, the woman's fever broke. She would survive. Elena slumped with relief, barely able to stand. Nikolai caught her before she fell. You need rest, he said. I'm fine. You're exhausted. Come on. He guided her outside into the fresh morning air. They sat on a bench, Elena leaning against him without thinking about it. You're good at this, Nikolai said. Healing people. My mother taught me. She was the village healer before she died. She'd be proud of you. The simple words made Elena's throat tight. My husband used to say that too. He was right. Nikolai paused. He was lucky to have you. I was lucky to have him. He was a good man. Elena looked up at Nikolai. He would have hated how we started. But I think he'd be glad the children are safe. That they're happy. Are you happy? The question hung in the air. Elena thought about it honestly. I'm not unhappy anymore. I don't wake up angry every day. I don't cry myself to sleep. Is that the same as happy? It's a start. They sat together watching the sun rise over the mountains. Villagers began emerging from their homes, seeing Nikolai and Elena together. The whispers would start again. But Elena found she didn't care as much. Let them talk. They didn't know what it was like inside her marriage, the complexity of it, the gradual thawing. They only saw the beginning, not what was growing now. Over the following weeks, Elena noticed Nikolai doing more small kindnesses around the village. He fixed the church roof without being asked, brought meat to families who were struggling, helped repair the Miller's burned house. Why do you do it? Elena asked one evening. Do what? Help people who probably whisper about you behind your back. Nikolai shrugged. They need help. I can give it. What they think of me doesn't matter. But Elena suspected it did matter. She suspected every act of kindness was his way of trying to be better than his worst moment. Trying to prove he was more than the man who'd forced a desperate widow into marriage. One night, Mira came to them with tears in her eyes. Papa Nikolai, Mama. The other children at church said, you're not really my papa. They said you made Mama marry you, and that's bad. Elena's heart clenched. Nikolai looked stricken. Before Elena could speak, he knelt down to Mira's level. They're right that I'm not your real papa, he said gently. Your real papa was a good man who loved you very much. I can never replace him. Mira's face crumpled. But I don't want them to say mean things about you. Some people will say mean things. That's their choice. But here's what matters. The truth is, I care about you. I care about your brother and your mama. And I'll always protect you and keep you safe. That's what family does. Does that sound good? Mira threw her arms around his neck. I love you, Papa Nikolai. Nikolai's arms came around her carefully, and when he looked up at Elena, his eyes were bright with unshed tears. Elena felt her own eyes stinging. After Mira went to bed, Elena sat beside Nikolai by the fire. You were good with her. I meant every word. He turned to her. I know I'm not their father. I know I can never be what you lost. But I want to be something. Someone they can count on. You already are, Elena said softly. They trust you. They care about you. That's not something you can force. They chose to love you. Did they have a choice? I forced you all into this life. Yes, they had a choice. Children can't be forced to love. They love you because of who you are with them. Patient, kind, present. Elena took a breath. I'm starting to see that side of you too. Nikolai stared at her. Starting to? It's been buried under a lot of hurt and walls. But I see it now. The man who rides through blizzards for medicine. Who carves toys he pretends not to make. Who helps people who judge him. That's who you really are, isn't it? Summer arrived with warm winds and long days. The forest burst into full life, and so did the cabin. Elena planted a garden. her hands working the soil while Mira and Thomas helped. More hindrance than help, but joyful in their efforts. Nikolai built raised beds for the vegetables, expanded the chicken coop, fixed everything that needed fixing. He worked shirtless in the heat, and Elena found herself watching him more than she should. The way his muscles moved under sun-browned skin. The way he smiled when Tomas brought him water. She'd stopped thinking of him as her captor. Now he was just Nikolai, her husband. The thought didn't make her stomach turn anymore. One morning, Elena woke to find breakfast already made and a note. Took the children fishing. Back by noon, there's fresh bread on the table. She ate alone, enjoying the quiet but missing their noise. When had she started missing them when they weren't there? When had this cabin truly become home? They returned at midday, the children chattering excitedly about the fish they'd caught. Nikolai cleaned the catch while Mira told Elena every detail of their morning. Thomas fell asleep in Elena's lap, exhausted and happy. He did well today, Nikolai said, glancing at the boy. Caught 2 fish all by himself. He loves spending time with you. The feeling's mutual. Nikolai's hands worked skillfully with the knife. I never thought I'd have this, children, a family. Neither did I. Not again, anyway. Elena stroked Thomas's hair. After my husband died, I thought that part of my life was over. And now? Elena met his eyes. Now I don't know what I think. Everything's different than I imagined. That evening, they worked together in the garden, weeding while the children played. Their hands brushed as they reached for the same weed. Elena didn't pull away. Neither did Nikolai. The village is having a festival next week, Elena said. For midsummer, Mrs. Petrova invited us. Nikolai's expression closed slightly. They don't really want me there. They're learning to see you differently. You've helped so many of them. Fixed their homes, brought them food. They're starting to understand you're not the person they thought. What person did they think I was? Dangerous, cold. The strange hermit who forced a widow to marry him. Elena pulled a stubborn weed. But actions speak louder than rumors. You've shown them who you really are. Have I shown you? The question was quiet, vulnerable. Elena sat back on her heels, really looking at him. Yes, you've shown me a man who's been hurt but hasn't let that hurt make him cruel. A man who's patient with children, generous to neighbors, and kinder than he wants anyone to know. Elena. He reached out, touching her cheek with dirt-stained fingers. She didn't flinch away. Come to the festival, she said softly. As a family. Show them we're real. He nodded slowly. If it's important to you, it is. The day of the festival, Elena dressed carefully. She wore her best dress, braided her hair with wildflowers. The children were scrubbed clean and excited. Nikolai wore the shirt Elena had made him, and she noticed he'd trimmed his beard, combed his hair. You look nice, she said. So do you. His eyes lingered on her face. Beautiful, actually. Elena felt heat rise in her cheeks. When was the last time someone had called her beautiful? When was the last time she'd wanted to hear it? Walking into the village together felt significant. People turned to stare. Some smiled, others whispered. But Elena held her head high, Nikolai beside her, the children between them. Mrs. Petrova beamed at them. You came. All of you. Come, there's food, music, dancing. The children ran off to play with friends. Elena and Nikolai stood awkwardly at the edge of the celebration. Then the old miller approached, the man whose wife Elena had helped. Nikolai, he said gruffly, my wife wanted me to thank you for staying with her that night, for helping Elena care for her. She says she'd have died without you both. Nikolai looked uncomfortable with the praise. Anyone would have done the same, but you did do it. That matters. The miller extended his hand. After a moment, Nikolai shook it. More people approached throughout the afternoon, thanking Nikolai for various kindnesses, complimenting Elena on her healing skills, treating them like a normal couple, a real family. When the music started, couples began dancing in the square. Elena watched wistfully. She loved dancing, hadn't done it since her husband died. Would you like to dance? Nikolai asked quietly. Elena looked up in surprise. You dance? Badly, but I'm willing to try. He led her to the dancing area, his hand warm in hers. The music was simple, a country melody everyone knew. Nikolai moved stiffly at first, clearly uncomfortable. But Elena guided him, and gradually he relaxed. See? You're not terrible, she said. Liar. But he was smiling. Really smiling. Open and genuine. Elena smiled back. and for those few minutes dancing in the summer sun with her husband's hand at her waist, she felt something bloom in her chest. Not quite love, but close. So close the children found them later begging for treats. Nikolai bought them honey cakes, letting Thomas ride on his shoulders. A neighbor woman remarked to Elena, "Your husband is wonderful with children." "Yes," Elena heard herself say. "He is." Walking home that evening, tired and happy, the children fell asleep and Nikolai carried them both, one under each arm. Elena walked beside him, their shoulders occasionally bumping. "Thank you for today," she said. "I know crowds aren't easy for you. It was worth it. To see you smile like that. To have people look at us and see a family, not a mistake." "We're not a mistake," Elena said firmly. "How we started was wrong, but we're not a mistake." He stopped walking, looking at her intently. "Do you mean that?" "I do," and she realized she truly did. Whatever they'd been forced into had transformed into something real, something worth keeping. That night, after putting the children to bed, Elena found Nikolai on the porch staring at the stars. She sat beside him close enough that their arms touched. "I've been thinking," she said, "about us, about this marriage." Nikolai tensed slightly. And I want to try." "Really try, not just survive together, but build something." She turned to face him. "I'm not saying I love you. I don't know if I do yet, but I want to find out. I want to give us a real chance, Elena." He cupped her face with both hands, his touch gentle. "I don't deserve that." "I don't deserve you? Maybe not, but I'm offering anyway." She covered his hands with hers. "I see you, Nikolai. Not the man who made a desperate bargain, but the man who's tried every day since to be better. That man deserves a chance." He kissed her then, soft, tentative, asking permission. Elena kissed him back, letting herself feel without overthinking. His arms came around her, pulling her close, and she melted into the embrace. When they pulled apart, both were breathing hard. Nikolai rested his forehead against hers. "I'll spend the rest of my life trying to deserve you. Just love me," Elena whispered. "That's all I need. Just love me and the children and be the man I'm starting to see. I already do. Love you, I mean. I think I have for a while now. I was just afraid to say it." Elena's heart swelled. "I'm not there yet. But I'm close. So close. That's enough. More than enough." They went to bed that night and for the first time came together as husband and wife by choice. It was tender, careful, both of them relearning intimacy after so much loneliness. Elena cried afterward, but they were good tears. Healing tears. Nikolai held her through the night and Elena finally understood what home meant. Not a place, but a person, a choice. A daily decision to stay, to try to build something beautiful from broken pieces. Summer unfolded in golden days. The garden flourished. The children grew tanned and strong. Elena found herself singing while she worked, laughing more easily, sleeping peacefully. She caught Nikolai watching her sometimes with such tenderness it made her breath catch. He touched her more now, casual affection woven through their days. A hand on her back as he passed, a kiss on her forehead in the morning. Small gestures that meant everything. One afternoon they were working in the garden together when Thomas ran up. "Mama, Papa, Nikolai, look what I found." He held a bird's nest fallen from a tree with 3 baby birds inside. Elena carefully examined them. "They're too young to survive without their mother. We have to help them." Mira cried. Nikolai built a small box lined with soft grass. They took turns feeding the birds, staying up through the night to care for them. It was exhausting, but they did it together, a family united in purpose. 2 weeks later, the birds were strong enough to fly. They released them at dawn, watching them soar into the sky. Thomas cheered. Mira cried happy tears. Elena leaned into Nikolai, his arm around her waist. "We did it," she said. "We did." He kissed the top of her head. "We make a good team." "Yes," Elena agreed, watching their children chase each other in the morning light. "We do." That night, lying in bed, Elena finally said the words that had been growing in her heart. "I love you." Nikolai went very still. "You don't have to say that. I know. I want to." She propped herself up on one elbow, looking down at him. "I love you, Nikolai. Not because I have to, not out of gratitude or obligation, but because you're a good man, a wonderful father, and someone I want to spend my life with." He pulled her down, kissing her deeply. "I love you too so much. More than I thought I could love anyone." They held each other in the darkness, 2 hearts that had been forced together now choosing to stay. Not because they had to, but because they wanted to. Outside, summer rain began to fall. Late summer brought harvest time and traveling merchants to the village. Elena was at the market with the children, buying seeds for next year's garden, when she noticed people whispering and pointing toward a newcomer. A man stood by the square fountain, dressed in expensive clothes that marked him as someone wealthy. He was tall, handsome in a polished way, and clearly enjoying the attention. Something about him made Elena uneasy. "Who's that?" she asked Mrs. Petrova. The old woman's face darkened. "That's Victor, rich merchant from the city. He's been gone for years." The name sent a chill through Elena. Victor, the man Katerina had left Nikolai for, the man whose existence had shaped her husband's pain. As if sensing her gaze, Victor turned. His eyes swept over Elena, lingering in a way that made her skin crawl. Then he started walking toward her. "Well, hello," he said smoothly. "I don't believe we've met. I'm Victor. Elena." She kept her voice cool, gathering the children close. "And these beautiful children must be yours?" He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Where's your husband? Surely he doesn't leave such a lovely wife unattended." "My husband is working," Elena said stiffly. "We manage just fine. I'm sure you do. Still, a woman like you deserves better than managing. You deserve comfort, security, the finer things." His gaze traveled over her worn dress. "You deserve more than a hard life in the mountains." Elena's temper flared. "I have everything I need, thank you. Now if you'll excuse us." She tried to move past him, but Victor stepped into her path. "Wait, I'm staying at the inn for a few days. Perhaps you'd join me for dinner? We could discuss opportunities for trade with your household." "No, thank you. Come now, don't be hasty. I'm offering business, nothing more, unless—" His smile turned sly. "Unless you're afraid of what your husband might think." "I'm not afraid of anything. I'm simply not interested." Elena pushed past him, pulling the children with her. As they walked away, she heard Victor call out, "Give my regards to Nikolai. Tell him Victor sends his greetings." The way he said Nikolai's name, dripping with mockery, made Elena's blood boil. She didn't respond, just kept walking, her heart pounding. That evening, she debated whether to tell Nikolai about the encounter. Part of her didn't want to bring Victor's poison into their home. But they'd built their relationship on honesty. She couldn't hide this. "Victor is in the village," she said over dinner. Nikolai's fork stopped halfway to his mouth. His face went carefully blank, but Elena saw the tension in his shoulders. "I see. He spoke to me at the market. Made inappropriate suggestions about dinner, about me deserving better than my life here." Elena reached across the table, taking his hand. "I told him no. I told him I have everything I need." "What else did he say?" "He asked you to give you his regards. He was mocking you, trying to get under your skin." Nikolai pulled his hand away, standing abruptly. "I should have known he'd come back eventually. Nikolai, I need some air." He walked out, leaving his dinner half-eaten. Elena found him behind the cabin, chopping wood with violent efficiency. She watched for a moment, seeing the old pain and anger radiating from him. "Talk to me," she said quietly. "What's there to talk about?" "He's here. The man who took everything from me. The man Katerina chose over me." Another brutal swing of the axe. "And now he's here, probably laughing at how I ended up. Probably thinking I'm pathetic. You're not pathetic, aren't I? I couldn't keep the woman I loved, so I forced another woman to marry me. He probably knows all about it. The whole region probably knows. Poor desperate Nikolai, so lonely he had to blackmail a widow." Elena grabbed his arm, stopping the axe mid-swing. "Stop it, that's not who you are anymore. It's exactly who I am. It's what I did." He threw the axe down, "And now Victor's here to remind everyone. To remind you. I don't need reminding. I know how we started. I also know who you are now. Who we are together." She moved closer, forcing him to look at her. "I love you. That man out there, whoever he is, whatever he did, he doesn't matter. You and I matter. Our family matters. Elena," his voice cracked. "I chose you," she said fiercely. "Not at first, you're right. But I'm choosing you now every single day. Victor can say whatever he wants. He can't change that." Nikolai pulled her into his arms, holding her so tight it almost hurt. She felt him shaking and realized he was crying. Silent tears of old pain and new fear. "I can't lose you," he whispered. "I can't. You won't. I'm not going anywhere." The next day, Elena returned to the village for church. Victor was there, sitting in the back pew, watching everyone with that calculating gaze. After the service, he approached Elena again. Mrs. He waited for her last name. Petrov, Elena supplied coolly. Elena Petrov. Victor's eyebrows rose. Petrov, then you're married to Nikolai? How interesting. I heard rumors, but I hardly believed them. Believe them? Oh, I do now. I have to say, Nikolai's done well for himself. You're far lovelier than his first choice. He leaned in conspiratorially. Of course, I suppose you didn't have much choice in the matter, did you? Word is he forced your hand rather cleverly. Elena's cheeks burned. My marriage is none of your business. I'm just concerned for your welfare. Nikolai always was a bit intense, obsessive even. When Katerina left him, he took it very hard. I'd hate to see him trap you in his bitterness. He hasn't trapped me in anything, hasn't he? A poor widow with 2 children, wolves at her door, and a hunter who demanded marriage in exchange for help. Victor shook his head with fake sympathy. That sounds like a trap to me. You're only here because you had no other choice. That's not true anymore, isn't it? Tell me, if you had money, independence, would you still choose to live in that isolated cabin with a man who coerced you? He pulled out a card. I have business interests across the region. I could offer you employment, a way out if you wanted it. You seem capable, intelligent, too good for the life you're living. Elena stared at the card, then at Victor. She saw through him now. This wasn't concern. This was cruelty disguised as kindness. He was trying to undermine her marriage to prove Nikolai was still the loser he'd always been. You want to know the truth? Elena said quietly. Yes, Nikolai gave me an impossible choice. Yes, I resented him for it, but he spent every day since trying to make up for it. He's been kind, patient, loving. He's a wonderful father to my children. He's become the best partner I could ask for. How touching, Victor said with a sneer. You've convinced yourself to love your captor. No, I've chosen to love my husband. There's a difference. Elena ripped his card in half. And unlike some people, when I make a choice, I honor it. Now leave me alone, and leave my family alone. She walked away, her head high, but her hands were shaking. Victor's words had struck deep, found all her old doubts and fears. That evening, several men from the village came to the cabin. The elder spoke for them. Nikolai, we need to warn you. Victor's been spreading rumors, talking about your marriage, questioning whether Elena is here by choice. He's stirring up trouble. Let him talk, Nikolai said flatly. It's more than talk. He's suggesting to the authorities that they should investigate. Make sure Elena hasn't been coerced. The elder looked uncomfortable. He's making you sound dangerous. Elena stepped forward. Then I'll speak to them myself. I'll tell them the truth. What truth? Nikolai asked bitterly. That I blackmailed you? That you married me to save your children? That I choose to stay, Elena said firmly. That's the truth that matters. After the men left, Nikolai paced the cabin like a caged animal. He's going to destroy everything. Everything we've built. Only if we let him. Elena caught his arm. Tomorrow we go to the village together. We show them we're a real couple, a real family. We don't hide, we don't act ashamed. We face this together. What if it's not enough? What if they take you away, take the children? They won't, because I'll fight for us just as hard as you would. She cupped his face. I love you, Nikolai. I won't let him ruin what we have. The next day they walked into the village together, the children between them. Victor was holding court at the inn, surrounded by villagers listening to his stories of city life and business success. He spotted them and called out loudly, Nikolai, my old friend, come join us, and bring your lovely wife. The way he said wife made it clear he didn't believe it was a real marriage. Nikolai's jaw clenched, but Elena squeezed his hand. They approached, standing together, united. Victor, Nikolai said coldly, it's been years. Look at you, still hiding in the forest. Victor's smile was sharp. Though I see you've acquired a family. However you manage that. I managed it by being here, Nikolai said. By being present, by building a life. You wouldn't understand that. You only understand taking what you want and leaving. Victor's smile faded. Careful, Nikolai. You're in no position to judge me. At least when I wanted something, I didn't have to force anyone. Before Nikolai could respond, Elena stepped forward. Her voice rang clear across the silent crowd. My husband didn't force me to stay. He gave me a choice, yes, a terrible choice when I was desperate. But since then, every single day has been my choice. I choose to wake up beside him. I choose to build a life with him. I choose to love him. She turned to face the gathered villagers. Some of you know our story. You know how we started, but you also know who we are now. You've seen Nikolai help your families. Victor left the village 2 days later, his pride wounded and his schemes defeated. The villagers talked about Elena's defense of Nikolai for weeks, the story growing with each telling. But in the cabin in the forest, life simply continued, quieter and sweeter than before. The confrontation had changed something fundamental. Elena and Nikolai no longer carried any shadows between them. The last remnants of doubt had burned away, leaving only certainty. One evening, as autumn painted the forest in gold and red, Elena sat on the porch watching the sunset. Nikolai joined her, settling beside her on the bench he'd built. "Penny, for your thoughts?" he asked. "I was thinking about the day I first came here. How terrified I was. How much I hated you." She smiled. "Seems like a lifetime ago." It was a lifetime ago. "We're different people now. Do you ever regret it? The way you did things?" Nikolai was quiet, considering. "I regret causing you pain. I regret not having the courage to do it differently. But I can't regret what we've become. Does that make me selfish?" "It makes you human." Elena leaned against him. "I've been thinking about something. About how we started versus where we are now. And I realized something important." "What's that?" "I want to marry you again." Nikolai turned to look at her, surprise clear on his face. "What?" "Our first wedding was hollow. Empty vows spoken out of desperation and demand. I want to marry you again for real this time. I want to stand before the village and God and choose you freely with my whole heart." Nikolai's eyes shone. "Elena, you don't have to. I know I don't have to. I want to. I want everyone to know that I'm here because I love you, not because I'm trapped. I want our children to remember their parents marrying for love." She took his hands. "Marry me, Nikolai. For real this time. What do you say?" He kissed her, deep and full of emotion. When he pulled back, he was smiling, that rare, beautiful smile that transformed his whole face. "Yes. 1,000 times yes." They planned the wedding for the harvest festival, giving them a month to prepare. This time, Elena sewed a new dress, cream-colored with wildflowers embroidered at the hem. Mira and Thomas were beside themselves with excitement, understanding that this was special, important. Mrs. Petrova helped with the preparations, tears in her eyes. "I never thought I'd see the day. 2 people who started so wrong making it so right." The morning of the wedding, Elena woke before dawn. She slipped out of bed carefully, not wanting to wake Nikolai. Tradition said they shouldn't see each other before the ceremony. She stood on the porch watching the sun rise over the mountains. A year ago she'd been broken, desperate, alone. Now she was whole, hopeful, surrounded by love. How strange life was, taking the worst moments and transforming them into something beautiful. "Mama." Mira appeared in her nightgown. "Are you nervous?" "No, sweetheart. I'm happy." "Good, Papa Nikolai is happy too. I heard him singing while he was getting ready." Elena laughed. "He was singing?" "Badly," Mira giggled, "but happy." The ceremony was held in the church at noon. The whole village attended, packing the pews. Elena walked down the aisle alone this time by choice, her head high and her heart full. Nikolai stood at the altar, and when he saw her, his face lit up with such pure joy that several people in the audience made soft sounds of appreciation. He looked handsome in new clothes, his beard neatly trimmed, his hair combed. But it was his eyes that captured Elena, his beautiful, expressive eyes that showed everything he felt. The priest smiled at them both. "We gather today for a special occasion. A renewal of vows, but more than that, a true beginning. Nikolai and Elena have walked a difficult path to this moment, but they've walked it together, growing stronger with each step. Today they choose each other freely, with full hearts and clear eyes." When it came time for vows, Nikolai spoke first, his voice steady but emotional. "Elena, I can't change how we began. I can't undo my worst moment. But I can promise you this. I will spend every day of the rest of my life trying to be worthy of your love. I will protect you and our children. I will honor your strength, your kindness, your incredible heart. You've taught me that love isn't something you demand or force. It's something you build day by day, choice by choice. Thank you for choosing me. Thank you for giving me a family. Thank you for teaching me how to live again. I love you with everything I am." Elena's turn. She took a shaky breath, looking into his eyes. "Nikolai, you gave me an impossible choice once, but in doing so you gave me everything. You gave me safety when I was in danger. You gave my children a father when they'd lost theirs. You gave me a partner when I thought I'd be alone forever. You've been patient when I was angry, gentle when I was hurting, constant when I was uncertain. You've shown me that love isn't always perfect or pretty. Sometimes it's messy and complicated and born from the hardest moments. But it's real. It's strong. It lasts. I love you, Nikolai. Not despite our beginning, but because of everything that came after. Because you're a good man who made a mistake and spent every day trying to make it right. I choose you. Today, tomorrow, and for all the days we have left. There wasn't a dry eye in the church. Even the priest had to wipe his face before continuing. They exchanged new rings, simple bands Nikolai had forged himself. When the priest pronounced them husband and wife truly and completely, the kiss they shared was different from their first wedding kiss. That one had been obligation. This was celebration. The village celebrated with them, a feast laid out in the square. There was music and dancing, food and laughter. The children ran wild with their friends. Mrs. Petrova told everyone who would listen that she'd known all along they'd make it work. As evening fell, Nikolai pulled Elena into a dance. They moved together easily now, naturally, like they'd been dancing together for years instead of months. Happy? He asked. Completely. Elena smiled up at him. You? More than I ever thought possible. Papa Nikolai. Mama. Thomas ran up, breathless. Come see. They lit the bonfire. They followed their son to where a massive bonfire blazed in the center of the square. Tradition said couples should jump over a small fire together for luck and fertility. Elena and Nikolai clasped hands, took a running start, and jumped. They landed on the other side, laughing, still holding hands. The crowd cheered. Mira and Thomas jumped next, needing help from both parents. They all ended in a heap on the ground, laughing so hard they couldn't breathe. That night, walking home under the stars, the children running ahead on the path, Nikolai stopped Elena with a hand on her arm. I have something to say. What is it? I'm sorry. I know I've said it before, but I need to say it again. I'm sorry for how I brought you into my life. I'm sorry for taking your choice away. I'm sorry for... Elena pressed her fingers to his lips. Stop, you've apologized enough. You've made up for it 1,000 times over. Let it go now. Let us just be happy. I am happy. Happier than I deserve. You deserve every bit of happiness you have. She kissed him softly. We both do. We've earned this, Nikolai. Both of us. The hard parts are over. Now we just get to live. When they reached the cabin, the children were already falling asleep on their feet. Nikolai carried Thomas while Elena guided Mira. They tucked them into bed, kissed their foreheads, and stood in the doorway watching them sleep. They're good kids, Nikolai whispered. The best. You're a wonderful father to them. They make it easy. He put his arm around Elena's waist. They're my children now in every way that matters. Later, lying in their bed, wrapped in each other's arms, Elena thought about the journey they'd taken. From desperation to resentment to understanding to love. It hadn't been easy. It hadn't been simple. But it had been worth it. What are you thinking? Nikolai asked, running his fingers through her hair. That I'm grateful? For what? For everything. For the wolves that brought me to you. For your impossible demand. For every hard moment that led us here. Because here is perfect. Even though I forced you, you gave me a choice I couldn't refuse. But I've made 1,000 choices since then. And every one of them has been to stay, to try, to love you. Those are the choices that matter. She propped herself up to look at him. Our beginning doesn't define us. Our ending will. And I plan to love you until the very end. Nikolai pulled her down for a kiss that said everything words couldn't. When they finally broke apart, both were smiling. Forever? He asked. Forever, Elena promised. Outside, autumn wind rustled through the trees. Inside, a family slept peacefully. 2 children who'd found a father. A man who'd found redemption. A woman who'd found strength she didn't know she had. They'd started with a devil's bargain, a forced marriage born from desperation. But they'd built something beautiful from those broken pieces. Love that was chosen, earned, real. Elena had come to the cabin a widow and a captive. She'd become a wife and a partner. She'd arrived in winter and found spring. She'd expected survival and discovered joy. The hunter had demanded a price she thought she couldn't pay. But in paying it, she'd gained everything she'd ever wanted. Family. Home. Love that lasted. Years later, when people asked about their love story, Elena never lied about how it began. She told the truth. It started wrong but ended right. It started with force but grew into choice. It started in darkness but found light, and when people asked if she regretted it, she always smiled and said no. Because you can't regret the path that leads you home.